Hello and welcome to another episode of The Lion's Den. I'm Toby Bennett and today we are looking at army deployments. So for quite a long time I have had people going, hey, we want to see how you deploy, wish we could watch you play a game, that kind of stuff. And I was like, right, well, I don't want to give away like all my secrets on the internet with my particular list, because especially with a Teams event coming up this weekend, I don't want to let my team down by having someone just go, oh, I know exactly what he's going to do, countering it and then screwing me over, and then me screwing the team over. So what I did instead was I went to my Discord, the Angelus Mortis Discord, and I asked people, can you submit some lists? And I will have a go at sort of deploying them on different maps. If you want to tell me which maps you'd like me to deploy on, then I can do that as well. And I had loads of really great submissions, so massive thank you to the community for doing that. Really, really appreciate you guys. And I've sort of opted for 3 of them just so that I can take a little bit more time per map and sort of really go through the logic, really explain maybe what that expansion looks like, what the early stages of the game should look like, how it allows you to sort of build that plan. And it links nicely to the video that I did a couple of weeks ago. I did take a little bit of a break from the content creation just because I've been absolutely stacked with events, and I've also started a new job recently. So just super busy life at the moment. Sometimes it do be like that. And then obviously there is the International Teams Tournament this weekend, where I'm once again suiting up with Crow Team 6. So hopefully that will be going well. Fingers crossed. Let's jump in. So this one is probably a little bit less phone friendly, but if you join the Discord, I will post these photos so that you can come and see them and study them in a little bit more detail. I've also said if people want to drop me a DM on Discord, I can happily do a few more of these. They don't take me too long to do. It might take me a little bit longer depending on how many I get, but c'est la vie. I quite enjoy doing it. It's good practice for me, and also it throws up interesting questions about the list. And what I've done is I picked lists that I thought were interesting, and I think for the most part, I think there's all really solid concepts in them and really solid ways that they could play. Are they the optimal list? Well, in my opinion, no, because they're not my list. If it was the most optimal list, then I would try and take it logically to my brain. That doesn't mean I'm correct. Everyone's got their opinions, right? Everyone's got an opinion, just like everyone's got an arsehole. And I am a massive arsehole, so that does help. But what I wanted to do was also go into the sort of the thought process of why I've deployed it there, and then why maybe a different data sheet could fill that role quite nicely. So that's just something to bear in mind as well. But overall, I really like these lists. So massive thank you to the 3 gents that submitted their lists. I didn't ask if they wanted to be named in the video, so I'm not going to do that. But massive thank you to the guys and everyone else in the Discord that submitted the lists. So we're going to kick off first with this Games Workshop map. Now, this is not something that I'm overly familiar with. Games Workshop is not a very common terrain setup that we use over here in the UK, but I know we've got quite a few US viewers, so I wanted to try and make this as inclusive as possible, and include at least one GW setup. So what we've done is we've got a GW, a UKTC and a WTC in that order. So if one of those just doesn't tickle your pickle, absolutely fine, just skip to the next one, or skip to the one after that, whatever's best for you. I won't be offended. I will be offended. But let's kick off with this GW one. So the list, I've got some little notes down here because on my recording screen, it's really hard for me to read the list and it's not got the characters on. But we've got Azrael with 3 Inner Circle companions, Samael with 3 Outriders, a captain with Stern Guard, and I've decided to put them in the Impulsor. So the player that sent me this list didn't state which unit he would put in the Impulsor. That's my gut feeling on what I think would be best. So that's what I've done. We've got some Intercessors vibing on their own, as aforementioned, Impulsor, 2 JPIs, 2 Ballistas, 2 Deathwing Knights, 2 Scouts units, and a Thunderstrike, which I really like. I think it's a really cool little list. I think it's got some really nice long-range punch. I quite like the fact that I'm interested to try Ballistas plus Thunderstrike. I think there's something there. that could actually be really interesting. So that might be, especially if Gladius becomes more of a thing, then I could really see that. Now, there's no enhancements on this list, and I wasn't told if there is a detachment, so I am going to be assuming that these detachments are either Stormlance or Gladius. In this detachment, I think I would assume Stormlance, maybe, but it could also be Gladius quite comfortably, because it's only got the 2 DWKs, but it's not got like the telltale signs of being Gladius, like the Catan captain, which is the Gravis armor captain in with Artificer armor as an upgrade. But yeah, it could be either, and it could be good in either. There's absolutely no problem putting it in either of those detachments. So what we've done, we'll start off with the nice and simple stuff. So we put some intercessors at home. Now, the way that I would deploy these is I would try and keep them as much in cover, really hugging the back of that ruin, just towing one guy on and then spreading them out towards the corner of the board, while still keeping them safe, not giving them that easy line of sight down that far left-hand flank, just so that I can try and screen my board out. You know, we want to try and use that back unit not only to hold our objective and to, in this case, which is even better, sticky the objective, but also just to screen out on those early turns. And once we've done that, that unit is so perfectly placed to come as like kind of a rapid response unit. And on this map, it's a little bit more difficult because ideally it wants to then head for your expansion objective, but that to me is actually quite far away. It's on the right hand side, but you could potentially contest your opponent's expansion objective with a 10 OC unit that charges in. So those intercessors can be really quite handy. So you use them very passively in the early game, and then once it's safe and you're away from those reserves, you can start really pushing them forward, adding those 20 shots of bolt of fire, and potentially leveraging that 10 OC to real benefit. I'm a real fan of intercessors for that very reason, because the sticky objectives is really quite handy when you just need that last unit to throw forward. Obviously, a lot of people use infiltrators in that role. I think that's perfectly legitimate. I think infiltrators are a phenomenal unit, but in my Dark Angels lists, I always feel like I need one more unit, and intercessors just really allow me to have that. So that's where we're putting the intercessors. Then we'll stay on the left flank. So we have got some scouts, and they're quite far up near our opponent's expansion objective, but they're nicely tucked away behind that building. Now, essentially, the reason that we've done that is to bait out our opponent, because then suddenly they're down facing either JPIs if they put something soft out to go and deal with those scouts, or they've got Deathwing Knights or potentially the Ballistas to fire down that angle and really punish them. So those scouts are just there to maybe you get containment round one, maybe you get cleanse, really making your life simpler and easier, by also having the option to maybe run forward, get a good turn one charge, maybe just lock your opponent in their deployment zone if they're able to scout further forward, and just really be a bit of a pain in your opponent's backside. So having those choices with scouts of either, if you're going second, being able to play really passively with them, hide them, potentially just bait your opponent out into a less advantageous position, or actually just go hyper aggressive with them, move block your opponent, cause those issues, early skirmish fights, that kind of stuff. That usually is the good position for scouts. You can also see that with the scouts in the center, because they can hop back behind that little blue ruin, just directly to their left and behind them. Or they can push forward along the centre and just move block your opponent coming out of their deployment zone. So particularly if you're against something like Imperial Knights, or a really heavy tank list, or mounted, that kind of stuff, or just some foot slogging infantry, scouts can be really good in that role if you get aggressive with them. But also you want something in the middle so that if you do pull something like area denial, or if you pull established locus, those kinds of secondaries, you've got them covered, which is really important, really, really key to doing that. And in this case, you can kind of see, especially with the impulsor down at the bottom, We've got our containments covered. We've got our cleanses covered. We've got all of those key secondaries with our board presence covered, which is really important because those action secondaries, when you've got this critical mass of units, they're really nice to get early and get them out of the way. So you don't want to accidentally screw yourself over by not having the board presence to be able to do them. So that one is quite important. So again, as we're saying, we're talking about the left. We've got some JPIs just sort of lurking with intent behind that far left-hand ruin. Now, the reason that they're there is to, they'll skirmish with those early units that push out. And they'll also look to contest our opponent's expansion objective. We're not looking to really win that flank. If the opportunity presents itself, excellent. However, that's really not an essential, looking at the way that this board is. What we're really trying to do is just delay them from getting and scoring that primary, which is why those scouts are there, and it's why the JPIs are there as well, just to provide that skirmish threat. Next, we've got the ballistas just behind the JPIs, and that's because I think there's a really nice angle just to kind of keep your opponent honest with what they put on that expansion objective, because it can cover just about anything there. It's really nice to be able to just pressure them, or it can go to the right, cover the center, or cover your own expansion objective. So there's lots of different options that gives you by having that ballistas there, and looking for those key lines I think is really important. And it's leveraging that range from a ballistas I think is even greater. So being able to hunt down where you can keep your opponent honest with your range I think is a very, very important aspect to playing Dark Angels. Next, hiding in that ruin, we've got some Deathwing Knights. Now, why did I put the Deathwing Knights there? It's because they're kind of an equal distance away from both the center and your opponent's expansion objective. Now, by placing them there, your opponent might go, oh, okay, cool. I know that he's going to send those Deathwing Knights over, contest my expansion with them, so I need to put some units over here. Maybe I need to overcommit a little bit more to make sure that I can secure my expansion objective. Excellent. We were never looking to win it anyway. What those Deathwing Knights are actually going to do is they'll push into the center with the other squad of Deathwing Knights. They'll crash through that wall, usually quite safe. Your opponent, there's only quite a thin angle that your opponent can get. So, if you can use that, use it. And then they'll be able to push into that center and contest theirs, which means that this list that only has the 10 Deathwing Knights can leverage them all in the same place, but keep your opponent guessing about where you're going to be going. So really nice little aspect there. Something that I really quite like, and something that I think would be quite useful there. So we've already mentioned the scouts in the middle. We've already mentioned the Deathwing Knights in the middle. Now we've got the Thunderstrike lurking with intent behind the central building on the left. Now, that is because the Thunderstrike has really solid movement, and we want it to be able to be a little bit more, not reactive is the wrong word, because you should never look to be reactive, but it can be proactive in its sort of hunting down of targets, because it's able to get to those sight lines really very efficiently while not really overexposing itself. So it can support both ballistas dreadnoughts very, very easily, which I think is very important for this unit to get that maximum efficiency. We know that ballistas with +1 to wound are extremely powerful, so giving them that from the Thunderstrike I think is a really nice little way of getting that outside of being vanilla Space Marines. So you can see the ballistas on the other side of the building as well. Thunderstrike can just go and support either of those. Having those key gun lines where it can keep your opponent honest, again, same logic as the other ballistas. Very nice and simple there. Next, we've got Azrael with the Inner Circle Companions. Now, that is partly a bait, because we're probably not bringing Azrael out for a decent amount of time, because we want to try and get the most out of his CP generation. And as with 3 ICCs, it's really not very survivable. It's only 3 wound models that your opponent has to chew through. And yeah, they've got a 4-up invuln save and they're -1 to hit, but they've only got a base 3-up and their toughness 4, which is quite weak. At least with like assault intercessors, you're able to roll more chances at 4-ups. which is usually pretty good, even if they are a wound less, but, c'est la vie. So that's why, to be honest, I prefer the Assault Intercessors. I think they get a little bit more out of Azrael as well. But there's nothing wrong with the Inner Circle Companions. I think they're still solid. 90 points for a unit, not bad at all. But what we really want to be doing with them in the centre is, as we push into the late game, they come out from that building, they push onto that centre objective, and either they secure it by clearing off the last threats there, because there's not much that once it's whittled down, ICCs can't kill. They're very multi-purpose. They're relatively cheap compared to other units in the army, so it doesn't matter a huge amount if you do hold them back for a bit. But then because they're 2 OC and because they do have that 4-up invulnerable save, towards the end of the game, they can just be such a threat that they get to the centre, they out OC any other sort of like scraps of units left or elite units holding that objective, and allow you to either keep pushing on with those Deathwing Knights, which by the way probably means you've won anyway, or it allows you to sort of get another heavy combat unit to just push that balance of power a little bit more into your favour. Next, we have got the right flank. So in the Impulsor, as I mentioned, we've got the Captain and Stern Guard. Now, I really like this unit to be pushing up early, which is why I've got it in quite an aggressive position. I think that's still safe, and I think that you would be 100% out of line of sight from all those firing lines by putting it that far up, which is really nice. And what I would do with that Impulsor is I would push it up into the centre objective. I would likely get out, not the centre, the flank objective. I'd likely get, punch me, Mike. I would likely get out behind that building with the captain and his stern guard, and then I'd wait for my opponent to start putting those units forward, because I don't necessarily need to charge with that unit, but equally when that unit does charge, it can be very impactful by using that Finest Hour ability, and obviously re-rolling all of those wounds and re-rolling all of those hits as well, because you do have to oath the target to get that. That can really just chop through anything. Dev wounds also nothing to be sniffed at. Then supporting that, we've got another similar role. We've got some JPIs and then Outriders with Samael. Now the JPIs go back to being skirmish. They are our cheaper unit, our throwaway unit, the unit that we can kind of rely on. On this flank though, the Impulsor is our most throwaway unit, which is really nice, like a tank that can go do actions after it's delivered its payload. Excellent. But the JPIs can skirmish really nicely. They can sort of push your opponent out of position, use their speed to kind of threaten their units they're expanding and maybe looking to push across into the centre if suddenly they clock that you're pushing there with Deathwing Knights. So they can be really handy in two different ways of just delaying your opponent or just keeping them honest and keeping them away from your expansion. And then we've got those Outriders. We know the kind of damage output that Samael gives with Outriders. They're not an overly durable unit. They might be a little bit more durable in Stormlance, but they're still not that durable in all honesty. But they can get thrown straight forward, plow through one or two units quite comfortably, and tie your opponent up for a little bit longer. So essentially we're securing that objective with our Impulsor, and then we're continuing to push on with those three units to kind of hit your opponent in waves. If it makes more sense into that opponent to hit them all at the same time, great, do that. There is nothing wrong with trying to set up that turn with both Deathwing Knights, the captain with the Stern Guard, the bikes, and probably the JPIs on the other flank, all hit at the same time and just sort of knock your opponent out with that single haymaker. Absolutely fine. Or you can go for that slightly more skirmishy option if your opponent is weaker to that, which is where you'll just sort of start hitting them in waves, denying them from getting to your objective, and just scoring the points. Because this list's really nice at scoring the points. And alongside that, the whole time you're keeping them very, very honest with that reliable re-rolling shooting power with +1 to wound into those targets that matter from the Ballistic Dreadnoughts. And the Thunderstrike, of course. So overall, I think this is a really nice little list. Would I change anything right now? In terms of keeping it the way that this player has clearly wanted to build it, I think I'd switch out the ICCs for Assault Intercessors. for the sort of the reasons that I've mentioned previously. And then that leaves us a random 15 points, which does make life interesting. What I would spend that on, don't have a clue. I think maybe it would actually be putting in probably infiltrators, actually, in this case, for the intercessors. But because I just, like, my gut is saying this might be a Gladius list, and I think infiltrators are a little bit better in Gladius. So yeah, I think that might be my switch if this is Gladius. If this is Stormlance and I'm talking absolute shit, then maybe we do something slightly different. But in that case, I think maybe I would still... The ICCs are the things that stick out to me as potentially the only unit that is not doing its job as efficiently as a potentially cheaper unit. So that would probably be my only major change. But yeah, so thank you very much for submitting this list. Hopefully that explanation was useful. Let's go on to UKTC, and let me get my notes for the UKTC one. Now, I really like this list because it's ballsy as fuck. It does not give a shit about scoring units apart from 2 JPIs and a combi lieutenant, and I love that. It's also very strangely sort of eschewed any kind of real anti-tank. It's got 1 ballistas. It's eschewed most ranged apart from a whirlwind as well. But I kind of love it for that. Like, I really, really like this list. I think it looks great fun. Do I think it's the best iteration of Dark Angels? Maybe not. But like, I really like the way that this plays and like the threat that your opponent will be facing when they see this list, because what it is, it's Azrael, 6 Inner Circle companions, and a lieutenant. Ow. So, I mean, the lieutenant I don't get, but because like, if we're looking at Gladius and I'll come on to that later, but that's the only one I'm like, I don't get that. Then we've got the Combi Lieutenant, which is the lone up guy, which is very nice. We've got the Rainwind Command Squad and 6 Outriders, so the 9 bike brick, 2x5 JPIs, 3 Deathwing Knights, a Ballistas, and a Whirlwind. So, where to start with this absolute beast of a list? Well, let's go in the top left first. So we're looking at the Combi Lieutenant. We're putting him here because he's hidden. He's reasonably safe there. He's screening off your opponent from coming in over in that area. He's got a reactive move, which can be very useful. He can get to that expansion objective to do a cleanse or just to sort of be a slight pain in the backside. But he can also do containment or any other sort of action-based secondary apart from obviously established locus quite happily. Because usually I think there's a bit of a lip on that ruin as well, so he could even do sabotage if you needed him to. Be a bit of a reach, but it's an option. So that's Combi Lieutenant. He's going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of being a scoring unit, because this army is light on scoring units. Next, behind him, we've got the 9 bike brick. Now, I would always deploy this unit here on Search and Destroy on UKTC, just because it has more space to get out nice and easy. And then particularly on this map, it was absolutely great because you use the order. I'm assuming this is Stormlance because you want to be playing the 9 bike brick in Stormlance, because it can just zoom across the board. It just gets across that center so easily. Like, it's genuinely terrifying how quickly you can go from being in that top left hand corner to the bottom right hand corner, just with the auto advance and then a decent charge, and you're putting real pain on your opponent by doing that. It's quite entertaining. I really enjoy doing it. And yeah, that Outrider brick, just being able to go, right, I am going to sit... That expansion objective is mine. I am going to put 27 OC onto it. If you dare try and take it off me, I am going to charge you with a massive brick of Inner Circle companions. It just allows you to really leverage that 1-2 punch where the Outriders hit the far expansion and those ICCs are then freed up to hit that center left objective with all of that OC, with that 4-up invulnerable save, and with that stabbing power. So real punch when they go in as well with Azrael. and the lieutenant. I really don't understand the lieutenant because, like, I don't understand giving lethal to the sustained 2 attacks. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, as I say, I love this list. That part I'm not getting. So I think that would probably be a change. I can't remember how much lieutenants are. He would probably become an ATV. I think for me, not an ATV with the Outriders. I know what you're probably thinking, you madman. But no, not with the Outriders on its own. So we have another action unit. But yeah, as I say, love this list. It's got some serious cojones on it. So yeah, as we kind of started on the ICCs, they are either our expansion, well, opponent's expansion, I guess. It's our expansion. We're claiming it. Stop the 27 OC, bitch. Let's see what happens. And then ICCs, which is another 14 OC. Should be 13 OC, my dude, but at the moment it's 14 and it's going strong. So that clatters forward, and that makes their expansion our expansion instead. And they can push that objective, or they can push into the center and support that Deathwing Knight advance. Really like that. ICCs again, I don't think are in the best spot in the world. I think you are still probably better having assault ints and then other odd units. But I get it, if your whole point of this army is to do one absolutely brutal knockout punch, cool, excellent. This army can damn well do that, because it's skirmishing very nicely with that whirlwind, with those JPIs, and partially, I guess, the ballistas, and then just delivering an absolute knockout blow between the Outriders, the Inner Circle Companions, and the Triple Deathwing Knights. Which brings us really nicely onto those Triple Deathwing Knights, which can flood the centre, happy as Larry, charge your opponent. I love Search and Destroy because it gives me such a close proximity to my opponent's front line. It is honestly one of my favourite deployments. You just run it straight. Go straight for them, straight down the middle, go, can you answer 15 Deathwing Knights, my friend? If you can't, you lose. It's simple as that. I love it. Deploy them aggressively, act aggressively with them, and you can see the way that I put these Deathwing Knights. They're even kind of like curling round that ruin. They're not in the ruin, they're curling round it. And that's because there's no real line of sight to the side of that objective. You got to just, and this is where it comes in, where you talk to your opponent, you go, right, my intent is to make sure they're out of line of sight. Where do you have to be to have line of sight as you come out of your deployment zone? Those kinds of conversations. But this is a really, really nice map to put those Deathwing Knights centrally and then push forward. Then we've already mentioned the Whirlwind. Again, the sheer bollocks of the guy. I love it. The Whirlwind is chilling at the back. With screening, we don't care about screening. What's screening? Screening's irrelevant. And it is just dealing with those units that it's usually going to be infantry units. It might be, say, like a Plague Marine unit that's a bit of a pain in the arse to deal with Deathwing Knights. Well, they're not a pain in the arse to deal with the Deathwing Knights, but like a Fight's First Brick causes you problems, or like Scourges maybe. Scourges could be quite an issue, or like Dark Reapers as well. It's pretty good at dealing with those kinds of units. So I really quite like that Whirlwind just chilling at the back. Again, who cares about screening when you're running straight at your opponent? It's a very cool idea because it's that you can't just drop like a scout unit or something simple in the backfield and take it off the Whirlwind unless you're rolling that 9-inch charge and sort of out-OCing the 3-OC hull. You have to really commit something to kill that toughness 10 tank. And will your opponent be able to have those resources if you're running down their throat with all of this? It's tough to say. I don't think they will. Depends on the list, depends on the opponent, depends how savvy they are as well. They might panic. I think a lot of opponents would panic when you do your big go turn. But yeah, the Whirlwind's just nice at softening those targets up, and just sort of keep it it goes back to that keeping your opponent honest. Speaking of which, we got a ballistas. Now, the ballistas, it's really simple with this one. The easiest and best line for this map is where that ballistas can just walk straight forward towards the right and get the line across the centre, but also being able to push forward and go and fire at the expansion, or go behind the building and just hold the expansion objective without being chargeable still, which is really quite handy because 4 OC unit in cover, causing pain in the arse, all that good stuff. But it just allows you to have that line and threaten your opponent if they want to try and push into that centre early, if they want to try and move, block you, etc., etc. Or like maybe they're going to throw a big nasty threat that you just want to soften up a little bit before those Deathwing Knights go in. And then we've got the 2 JPIs. Partly they're there so that they can either push across the centre if they need to. There is nothing funnier than charging up onto the small L and going, well, engagement range is 5 inches vertically, so I'm in combat with you, my dude, which is really quite fun to do with JPIs. But you can also kind of use them just to kind of what is technically your expansion, but we're kind of ignoring it. You can use that to skirmish there, keep your opponent off of that for as much as possible, because if you know the UKTC mission back, this is taken hold, so you are looking to kind of bully that primary. So just use those JPIs, say, you're not scoring this objective, you're not scoring the center objectives, and you're definitely not scoring your expansion objective. So that would be a really efficient way of doing that. But those JPIs have a lot of options in terms of what they do. And they can also just score for you. They can just go chill on that objective. They can just go and chill and score points with secondaries. But I really like that position to be kind of aggressive. They can stage behind that central line building quite happily. Which is going to drag your opponent out. And if you've had to be a bit more conservative with your Deathwing Knight push, that's a really great way of getting your opponent out into the open. Because there's not many ways that this list drags people into the open. So those JPIs, again, might have to do some heavy lifting. Ballistas might have to do some heavy lifting alongside the Combi Lieutenant up top. Overall, really like this list. The only thing I'm like, I don't get it is the Lieutenant. As I've said, I would drop that and make it an ATV so that you can go and score. If I changed it to an ATV, I'd put the ATV down with the Ballistas just so that it could scoot around, maybe screen out that corner in the back right hand side. And it's just kind of a handy, efficient piece. So yeah, really like this one. Thank you so much to the person that submitted it. I had a real laugh with this list and thinking how I would use it. I kind of want to try it. I might have to at some point. I would probably change it a little bit. But there is a lot in this list that makes you go, yeah, that's kind of cool. And I really do miss playing the Dark Angels armies with that colossal go term where you just hit your opponent with 15 Deathwing Knights and 9 bikes and just went, whatever's in front of me, it's gone, it's dead, over. That was always one of the most fun parts of playing Dark Angels. And I do miss that a little bit. And I know it's still the correct decision, but it's less fun. And ultimately, we're adults playing toy soldiers. Fun should be the most important thing, but we're playing competitively, all that kind of thing. Anyway, that's the UKTC map. Let's jump in to the WTC map. So again, I think this is a Gladius list. This mission, I think, can either be Terraform or it might be Purge, might be Scorched Earth. Can't remember off the top of my head. It's a Crucible deployment. Don't come for me for putting that line in the wrong place. For some reason, it snapped into position on Canva and would not move, and it just wouldn't behave itself. And I lost my temper with it and was just like, no, screw it, it's there. So I know that it's not in the perfect position. I just also couldn't be asked to put it in the correct position. We all know how to do Crucible of Battle deployment zones. We're not silly. Anyway, the list. So it starts off with Azrael with Assault Intercessors. Yes, good. Lieutenant with Combi Weapon. Again, good, really nice scoring piece. We've got the Lion here, which I was like, we've got to have Lion Dad at some point, right? We've got some intercessors, we've got 2 JPIs, we've got 2 Deathwing Knights, we've got 2 Ballistas Dreadnoughts, a Gladiator Reaper, really like that, some Incursors, and some Scouts. So, bonuses and negatives to this list. Incursors, I'm really not keen on at the moment. And if this is Gladius, I would really like to see the Catan captain in there. I love the idea of the Catan captain with the lion. I think there's a lot of good reasons for that. And now that the lion can't reactive move in Stormlance, I think there's a lot more reason to potentially play him in Gladius, because he could never reactive move there. But you know, like there's a lot more options. But let's run through it. Let's go into it. So we'll start off again. We've talked about intercessors. We know why they're there. We know how we're deploying them to try and screen our opponents out. Again, making sure that they can't just drop down in our backfield, get off a cheeky, deploy teleport homers, etc., etc. Now, for the first time in this video, we have put something in reserve. And that's the Gladiator Reaper. And I really like putting something in reserve on Crucible, because there is a big chunk of space that your opponents usually have to push into in that turn 2 that you can get a Gladiator into, and usually you can be pretty safe. It doesn't work as well on WTC, but on this particular map, there is a small space towards the bottom, and there is a little bit more space on the top as well that you can come in on that turn 2. I think it's more likely to end up supporting that bottom area or the centre by sort of pushing in where the Incursors are around, and sort of just shooting either down that flank or into the centre. WTC is a very different beast, and we'll come on to that later. But you know, that would probably be where the Gladiator Reaper comes into to apply that pressure. Next, let's go with the Incursors, because we started on them. So they're going in that building where they can either sort of scout defensively and just make sure they're nice and safe behind that building footprint, or they can scout forward and just start sort of gently expanding towards your opponent's expansion objective, and just threatening it a little bit. They're not going to do much, but they can just be a bit of a pain in the arse. They're a little stumbling block, delay your opponent from getting to the center, that kind of stuff. This expansion feels very difficult to kind of try and challenge unless you've got a lot of resources to throw at it, and I don't think this list quite has the resources to do that, but we've got the Ballistas behind the central building, which can then give fire onto their expansion objective quite happily. So you know, that line of advance after they take their expansion is nicely covered. In the center, we've gone for 2 Deathwing Knights and the Lion. So that is because I want massive punch in the middle, charging forward, doing as much damage in that center, making sure that we win it, and then probably pushing towards their expansion. And if not pushing towards their expansion, pushing towards their home. So that is usually better for sort of the primary bully missions, which I think Terraform probably is one. Less so your Scorched Earth, your Purge of the Foe. But ultimately, again, we've gone for that bomb in the centre that hits like a ton of bricks, gets that turn of advance and charge, constantly just has the Lion in lone op as well, because he's surrounded by 10 Deathwing Knight buddies, and they just pound through anything they see. Alongside, if your opponent decides that if they think it's a good idea to charge Deathwing Knights, you've got a really nasty heroic intervention threat in the Lion right there. Is that less survivable? Yeah, I think it is less survivable than a third unit of Deathwing Knights. Has it got merits? Also, yes. We can deploy really aggressively with the Lion on this map because it is very easy to keep him safe, and also you can lone up him really nicely. So I actually quite like the Lion on this particular map. We've got scouts in the centre. Same reason that we said for the GW deployment. They can either jump back behind that wall and be nice and safe, or they can just cause issues for your opponent with their expansion, score those points in the middle, etc., etc. All that very nice stuff. Similarly, we've got the Combi Lieutenant up just outside of your deployment zone so that he can do a tasty bit of containment if needs be. and also just sort of there to score you some nice points. And also he's not a bad threat if your opponent tries to skirmish. You can throw him out, kill the unit with his combat and his little bit of shooting, and then reactive move back behind the wall with his innate reactive move, which is very nice. Got Azrael and his Assault Intercessors to kind of secure that expansion. We do also have a Ballistus Dreadnought there, partly to cover that line of expansion out from their home objective, but also just thinking about, is there a good 2-up save that we can pop onto the home objective and be happy as Larry, which is what that Ballistus can do. I think that's literally, that is everything. Yeah, that's everything in this list. I think, when after you put the Lion and Deathwing Knights in, it's tough. So WTC, something that I have learnt, more so was taught by, and massive thanks to Louis from Mind Goblins for supporting me on this one, because it was a steep learning curve. WTC just doesn't have the long range angles to like really take advantage of things like Predators. It's a lot better for Vindicators, and I think there's a big argument for the full combat Stormlance list if you're going for Stormlance, and I think you definitely want Vindicators if you're going Gladius. I think I will probably lean into a 2-up save stat check, maybe 3 Deathwing Knights, the Lion, Ballistus, Vindicators, possibly doing that in Gladius, so we'd get the Catan captain in there as well. And then just the kind of the scouts and the scoring pieces as well. I'm not sure what that really looks like. I need to sit down and really have a think about that. But I think that could have real merit to it on WTC, because obviously you also have the 2-inch engagement rule of going through walls and that kind of stuff in combat, which is quite nice. And it just facilitates that more combat focused. And I felt when I played on WTC recently, I brought 3 Predators and I kind of felt like I had my pants yanked down because I couldn't leverage those like long ranges, which really punished me, because I'm like, yeah, I can probably pick up a War Dog with these Predators, but then they're within 24 and my opponent has Melters, which is a real problem for this army, which also does, I think, expose the potential weakness with taking a UKTC tailored list onto WTC. But equally, I think there's more scope for the Lion on this. I'm hoping that he takes another little points drop. Please, GW, because then he'll be real nice. But I think actually WTC he could work. And I'm kind of excited to try it, because obviously, like, my favorite thing is playing Primarchs, because Primarchs are cool. So yeah, that is the WTC deployment. Thanks again to the player that sent that in as well. As I mentioned at the start of the video, feel free to drop me a message on Discord. There will probably be the details of the Discord in the bottom. If there's not, just drop a comment and tell me to put it in and that I'm lazy. And yes, it is because I'm lazy. It's not actually because I'm lazy, because I'm really tired at the moment after this new job. And 3 GTs in a row. That was a great idea with a new job. Not a complete moron. I am a complete moron. But then we've got some lovely sponsors. We've actually got a new sponsor on. We've got a case service called Trident Cases. I think that's their name. Sorry, I've been so zonked recently. But they do these absolutely stunning 3D printed army cases. I'm going to be buying one because it has the BCG logo on. I'm going to get the BCG logo on one side and the Dark Angels symbol on the other. I think that could be really cool. I just kind of love it, and it looks really nice and safe, works with my magnetized options, but it's also a lot smaller than the bag that I've got at the moment, which is a big boon, because that bag, although very useful, it's just a bit of a pain in the arse to move around, especially if you're like me and you get trains to tournaments. So that can cause issues, especially on the tube and things like that. If you have to go through London, which from where I am, you usually do have to do. But yeah, so that they're a really nice little sponsor. Then obviously, if you want any of these terrain setups, you can pick up a set from Terrain Forge. They've just updated their UKTC set, and it looks class. Like, there's lots of really nice little details that you actually don't get on the actual UKTC set. which is kind of cool. I like the fact that they do that, and they do that bit of extra detail. It really helps bring the board to life, which is nice. And then obviously we've got our wonderful, wonderful sponsor, Glasshammer Gaming. You might have seen me recently in my Glasshammer cocktail dress, which is because I had to buy a shirt, lovely. I had to buy a shirt from Glasshammer Gaming because I played in a Teams event with them, but they only had XXLs and I wear a small, so it looks quite large on me. It was quite funny sort of running around our Airbnb in nothing but this shirt and my boxers going, hey look, I'm in a cocktail dress. So that's the kind of stuff that the real creme de la creme of Warhammer players get up to while they're playing Warhammer. Also, if you're watching this video as it comes out, I think Manny and David will be currently streaming Thursday Night Fight Night over on Glasshammer. So go check that out as well, because they're awesome. And for Glasshammer, use the code Black Crow to get 5% off. Use the code BCG5 on Terrain Forge to get 5% off as well. I don't believe we have a discount code for Trident, but equally they're a small startup. Like, go support the little guy. That's how they grow. That's how they become fucking awesome, and I love seeing that. Also, thank you so much for bearing with me while I just took this little bit of a break. Super important to do that sometimes. Really important to look after your mental health. I felt quite burnt out after those tournaments. I think I just did a bit too much. So, not ideal, but, you live and you learn. I'm still kind of early in my competitive journey, so I know it might not seem it, but I've only been playing for a year and a bit. Competitively, I played a little bit before that as well, just casually with mates. So, learning that tournament fatigue is really important, and don't be harsh on yourself while you're learning that tournament fatigue, I would say as well. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. You can also join all of the Discords. There's both the Black Crow one and my one, the Angelus Mortis Discord. You can subscribe to my Patreon, which is the Angelus Mortis Patreon. Give me all your lovely money. It means that I can go to more tournaments and buy more models, and I like doing that. So yeah, go do that. If you like my content, you don't have to do that. I do this for a bit of a laugh in front of a camera. You can also book me for a coaching session if you like over on angelus-mortis.co.uk. And also you just drop me a message on Discord and we can sort of time out. It's so much easier than that stupid booking system on the website. Not that I made the website at all, but we'll ignore that fact. And then obviously we've got all the Black Crow socials. Go give them a like, go give them a follow, go give some love. And if you're in the UK and you're near Nottingham, there is a Women in Warhammer event going on Saturday the 3rd of May, which is this weekend if you're watching this as it comes out. If you do go, you can see 3,000 points of my models because I've lent them 3 1,000 point armies. So the wonderful ladies, just nearly called them guys, just so used to it from playing Warhammer. That is part of the, not problem, but problem, you know what I mean. The lovely team from Sisters of Eldar are running that event, and it's really cool. I like seeing more people play competitively. I like seeing more people play Warhammer. I am the exact reverse of a gatekeeper, in that I will force people to enjoy this hobby with me. I love it. I want everyone to love it. So yeah, go give them some love if you're in the Nottingham area. Tell them that I say hi, because I'm kind of gutted that I can't be there, but unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, because I'm really looking forward to it. But I will be fighting it up at the ITT. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. And remember, stay loyal, fuckers. Bye for now. See you later.